I'm very excited to bring you to this interview Susannah Juteau, who is going to tell us how to use fasting to eliminate migraines and headaches. Susannah holds a bachelor's degree in neuroscience and a master's degree in nutrition and dietetics. As a registered dietitian, she advocates against the traditional eating paradigm and helps women regain energy, confidence, and vitality. She is an avid traveler who loves playing sports and competing in geeky board game nights with her husband. She is determined that her two young girls grow up continuing to be best friends. So, welcome, Susannah Juteau. Thank you for being here to help us understand which are the best strategies to eliminate headaches or migraines using a powerful tool like is fasting. So, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this discussion together.
Yeah. So, maybe first you want to tell us, as a nutritionist, what brought you to this journey?
Yeah, so it's been quite the journey. The big, I think of my life as like before and after this one event where I soon after my 30th birthday, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, a benign brain tumor, but it was pushing on my brainstem. And the brainstem is vital to life. So they rushed me into surgery within 2 weeks, and leading up to that point, I all of a sudden started getting really bad headaches, and then they kept getting worse. And when I'd go to doctors, they're just like, well, you hit your head, must be something like that. And I was like, well, it didn't start with hitting my head, so it didn't seem like a real answer. And no one had any solutions. No one was really like looking into things and just saying like, go to work if you can go to work. And so I kept pushing myself, and I kept saying like, is this all in my head? Am I imagining things? And then I'd go back to work and they'd get worse again. And it was just this like constant battle. So when I finally got diagnosed with the brain tumor, I was like, okay, this is the solution. Now I'll get rid of all my headaches. I'll have the surgery and everything will like go back to normal. So of course there was the fear of the surgery itself, but that was much less than the feeling of relief to finally get past those chronic daily headaches that they weren't diagnosed as a migraine, but very similar to that, like couldn't have bright lights, the sounds, and just couldn't function and focus on anything. So I was happy that I had a solution that many people don't ever get that opportunity to have a solution. So it was a 10-hour brain surgery. And then they told me probably within 6 to 8 weeks, you'll be able to return to work full time. And so I was like, perfect, that's great. But that didn't happen. So it was actually a year process of constant daily headaches that all of the doctors said, hey, you shouldn't be having these anymore. We don't know what's wrong. Here's some medication. And so it was a year that I wasn't really able to work and constantly trying to figure out how to heal myself. Eventually, we did find medications that could control the headaches for the most part. So the following 4 years, so 5 years in total, I still had headaches very often, but controlled by medication. And then so all this time, especially as a dietitian, I'm trying to think like, okay, well, what are the nutrition solutions? There must be a solution out there, because the doctor there was no fundamental reason for having headaches. And so I was just always on the search for something. And at the same time, I was having clients who were asking about intermittent fasting, like, should I be fasting? What's the science behind it? Is this legit or not? And at first I was like, no, we should be eating 3 times a day, have snacks in between, and the typical like conventional medicine. And as more people asked, I was like, okay, well, I better start looking into the research myself and see what it's saying. and found it so compelling, and also found a lot of anecdotal evidence that fasting could heal migraines. And so I decided to apply it to my own life. And within 4 weeks, I was able to cut my medications in half. And within 8 weeks, I was off all medications completely.
Wow.
And I haven't looked back since. So I've been medication free and largely headache free. I get maybe 2 headaches a year now. So a drastic improvement.
This is really an amazing journey. Well, you here, and you are really a big proof of how we can really eliminate them just with making certain changes. And I always say we have the most powerful tools already in our body in order to heal. We just need to learn how to use them, right?
Absolutely. Because with time, we've just neglected all of these ancient remedies that were just a part of daily life. And with all the marketing and the food availability and just food is, no matter where we go, we have a conference, we have friends meetings, like everything is all food oriented, which is great in many ways, but in other ways, we're just eating all the time. So to be able to stop that and really kind of pay attention to the healing within and our own abilities, because fasting is free. That's also another reason why, like, maybe we don't hear about it as much as we could, is that there's no money to be gained from promoting fasting in many ways. So
fasting is free, save you money, save you time from cooking that much, and it's helping you in healing your body. So it's a really good tool. So maybe you want to tell us a little bit deeper how really fasting can help us eliminating specifically headaches.
Yes. So I've narrowed it down to kind of like 3 main areas that I would say that it's helping. But really, the more studies that I read, the more that I'm like, okay, well, that's a great. No wonder why fasting is helping. Just like all the way down to the gut. I know you talk so much about the gut, is that like fasting can help improve our gut, and then our gut is secreting so many different hormones, and then the gut brain, all that connection. So the 3 that I've kind of narrowed it down to the main reasons why fasting helped with my headaches is that, one, that we're getting into ketosis. So there's the ketogenic diet that can get us into ketosis, and that's why there is quite a bit of research saying that the ketogenic diet helps with migraines. So this is just another way to help with migraines by getting into ketosis. So ketosis is one way, and I know your community is well familiar with ketosis, so I won't bother going into more detail about that. The other area would be autophagy. So the autophagy of just like cleaning up the cells, and autophagy is extra powerful in the brain. So cleaning up the neurons. I love to use this little demonstration here. So if this is our neuron, we've got the soma, the cell center, and the dendrites like meeting up with all the other neurons, and then we've got the axon and the terminal buttons here. And if we think of the like different, toxins just in the environment or in our world, in our food, all over, they start to build up, and they also build up in the cells in our brain. So with autophagy, we're just like slowly cleaning up these cells and like getting rid of some of these toxins. So, maybe every couple of days we get rid of one of these little toxins in this neuron. And over time, all of the neurons can really connect, and the signaling will just work so much better. And then also fasting just brings down inflammation in the body, and that happens in the head as well. So with headaches, we know that there's more inflammation going on, and so fasting can help with that. And then the third way is the BDNF. So the brain-derived neurotrophic factor, is fasting increases that. And so that also helps with the neurons like firing together, and just making it so much more seamless, and like having that mental clarity and ability to focus, and um, just overall cleanup and recycling of old cells that aren't performing as well. We can recycle them and make better cells. And BDNF has actually been proven to increase cell neuron synthesis. So that's also very powerful. So I attribute those three things as the main reasons for there being a benefit.
Yeah,
With
cleansing and detoxifying from toxins in our body is one of the main surviving mechanisms. It's not just how clean is what we put in the body, it's the ability to eliminate all those toxins that are circulating around, and they can even affect our brain and cause headaches. So yeah, this is really powerful. But considering that migraines or headaches could have different different triggers, like hormonal or tensional, like different triggers, is there a different type of protocol for different type of migraines, or is always the same?
So I think for migraines, it's really important to look at the individual, like at the individual level, because I really feel like there's so many different buckets that could be causing the migraine that it's like, for me, the silver bullet, if you will, was that fasting made that improvement. But for someone else, maybe adding fasting, nutrition, and sleep becomes the magic bullet, because once they've like perfected all the different areas, because lifestyle is so key. So there could be just like a certain area that you could tweak, and that tweak will help your migraines go away. Or it could be like three different areas to improve. So I think it's really important to work with someone at that individual level, where they can really look into your nutrition, because it could be as simple as like a few micronutrients being completely off, and then the whole mechanisms slow down or don't work at all to help with the brain cleanup and everything. So there's just so many factors, and it's the same thing with fasting too. Like, I wouldn't say that one particular type of fasting like that can help with everyone with migraines, but I do find the longer, more therapeutic fasts will make more of a difference than a short intermittent fast. So either following the 16-8 or 20-hour fasts a day. For me, that wasn't enough. That's actually how I started. I started with a 16-8 protocol, and I did that for a couple of months, and it just didn't do anything at all for my headaches. And once I increased my fasting to a 24-hour period, that's where I saw the benefits. So I do a 24-hour fast twice a week. So every Monday and Thursday. And to a lot of people, that sounds scary until you start doing it, and you're like, oh, this is actually easier, because you can eat normally on the other days, and you still eat every day, because the way it works is like you go from supper on Sunday to supper on Monday, and that's a 24-hour fast. So a lot of the time is spent sleeping.
Yeah, the rest of the time we're busy doing something else, so we don't really think about it. But what is important is that the body has already shifted to burn fat as a fuel instead of glucose, because otherwise it's very hard to go that long without eating, and that can even cause more headaches. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so then when you say, let's go a little bit more in detail, the hours, you do like a couple of days, 24 hours, and the other days are normal. So in between the 24 hours fastings, you don't do any other intermittent fasting, you do your 3 meals.
I do my 3 meals those other days. So it gives that flexibility, especially for someone who loves breakfast or who's kind of eating with their family a lot. So I feel like there's just much more flexibility. So what I do is I just pay attention to my hunger on those other days. So sometimes it might be a 12-hour fast, sometimes 14 hours. It really, I just let whatever feels natural to me. But I do aim for 12 hours those other days, just because I feel like that's our natural. If we think back 100 years ago, that's how everyone ate. Like, if we think of our grandparents, they didn't eat until 11 o'clock at night, until they went to bed. Like, usually when the sun goes down, you stop eating. So I do try to follow that, at least, is having the 12-hour fast the other days of the week, but then I just eat whenever I'm hungry.
Yeah, actually, I can relate to that being from Spain. The schedules over there are a little bit
Yeah.
late, always having late dinner, late lunch, late breakfast. Is everything is delayed. But yeah, as
Yeah,
you
that
said, following the sunlight. That is the most important. But leaving at least the 12 hours break in between. That is
mhm,
that is important. So also, we can hear many times the fasting headaches. So we are using
mhm.
fasting to remove headaches, but actually there's people that can get headaches with fasting. So
With
why do you
fasting.
think is that, and how someone can prevent getting a headache with fasting?
Yeah, yeah. So that and it's actually those fasting headaches that discourage so many people with migraines or from going taking it any further because they're saying, "Whoa, my headaches got worse." Like it's clearly not for me, but really it's about getting over that hump of getting used to getting into that fat burning mode. So some ways to make that alleviate that a bit is to slowly cut down the carbohydrates so that you're not having a huge carbohydrate load the day before. And I know your community is is typically pretty low carb. So for your community, I'm sure they would have a much easier time incorporating this style of fasting, the 24-hour fast. So, but the general public, I tell them to start with their nutrition really. So making sure that they're eating balanced meals and restricting those refined carbohydrates and just overall cutting down on the carbohydrates so that the ease into the fasting becomes much easier. And just getting used to the getting into that fat burning mode and getting into ketosis because that's where the fasting headaches happen. And then also making sure that, I mean, they could start with some salt in their water that can kind of make it a bit easier. And also just recognizing that it is a short-term thing, that it's, I mean, it's usually that 2-week hump where it feels more difficult at the beginning. And then once you get past that, it goes away. What are some of your strategies there?
So yeah, what I see mostly is that yeah, hypoglycemia and dehydration are the main causes for the migraines. Yeah, dehydration and the lack of minerals, as you said, putting a little bit of salt in water, that is very important. So how much salt do you recommend to put in the water to prevent getting diarrhea? Because that could be another side effect of putting too much salt in the water.
That's so true. Uh, I I haven't been asked that before, but that's such a valid point. But I feel like just a pinch of salt is plenty to make sure that your electrolytes are staying elevated, and really making sure that you're drinking a lot of water, which which actually anyone who has a migraine is so used to drinking a lot of water already. So I think they most of the time they have that aspect covered, is that they're so used to drinking a lot because that's kind of the first strategy when you're trying to get rid of your headaches is like, are you drinking enough? So
Yeah.
so we're all used to drinking a lot already. So just a little pinch of salt in the water can help a bit further.
And is there anything that we can drink during the fast as well that is not breaking the
Right.
fast?
Yeah, so the best type of fasting would be the clean fasting, which would be black coffee, plain like bitter teas and water. And once you're more used to the fasting, then I personally just open that up a little bit more with any type of tea that you like. So I know there's a lot of experts in the fasting community that would say no to that, but as long as there aren't any calories to it, I say whatever makes your fast easier, especially when because you're doing a 24-hour fast, you want to really enjoy it. And when you are experiencing some of those hunger signals, that like having a really nice tea, it just makes it, uh, you quickly forget it because you feel like that warmth going all the way down and you enjoy the tea that you're having. Whereas like for me, a bitter tea wouldn't give me that satisfaction in the same way that, so I love like black licorice or there's, I like to switch it up, but like different mint teas and stuff. So
Actually, the ones that you just mentioned, mint and licorice at the same time, are really soothing for the digestive system. Licorice is one of my favorite, really good actually for balancing cortisol, so helps with stress, but also for keeping the integrity of the mucosa and the gut lining. So
Okay, well, there we go. There's extra reason behind it. That's the body's intuitive sense of we already know what to do.
So what do you think about the bone broth fast during those 24 hours? That's something that you would recommend?
I don't recommend it for the 24 hours because it's not really necessary, because that is still a fairly short window and you are eating later in the day. So usually you can kind of distract yourself and you're busy, and most people just find themselves so much more productive because they're not going to the kitchen to eat every couple of hours. So the time actually passes very easily. And I know that can be overwhelming to someone who's never done it before. They're like, no, I get too angry. But it's amazing that, like, that was me. I said that all the time. But once you start doing it, you realize, like, oh, okay, this is really easy. I keep the bone broth recommendations more for 3 or 5 day fasts. So those longer therapeutic fasts, which are really good for body healing, and then having the bone broth on those days instead.
And those 4 or 5 days fast could be also beneficial for headaches and migraines?
I mean, there's no research on it, but I feel that if you're not getting results with the 24-hour fast, then it's possible your migraines are just that much more severe than someone else's, especially if you're working with someone and you've covered all of those different aspects that the migraines that could be making the migraines worse. So if we get to the point that regular 24-hour fasting still isn't working, then taking it to that next level with, okay, let's try a 3-day fast and see how that longer period of autophagy, if that will benefit you. And then the 5-day fast, we know that autophagy peaks on day 4, and then there's more stem cell production on day 5. So I'm a big believer in, like, that 5-day fast might be the solution once, but to build up to that point, because most people don't want to do a 5-day fast.
No.
It does
I don't think I have
limit
ever been that
your
far.
lifestyle.
Yeah, I haven't been that far.
Yeah.
So then, which would be also the best way to break that 24-hour fast to prevent a migraine or a headache?
So really important to pay attention to balanced meals. To plan your meals ahead of time is key, because what we find, especially with the 24-hour fast, is like when it's time to break your fast, you're really excited for a meal at that point, and you're thinking about all the different foods. You're like, oh, I can't wait to eat this, I can't wait to eat that. So if you haven't planned anything, then you just you tend to just, like, grab a little bit of this. Oh, now I feel like some cheese. Oh, now I feel like some chocolate. And in the end, you're not eating anything of, like, nutritional substance. And what we really want is, like, an actual meal that's balanced with lots of vegetables. So getting like, what a typical balanced meal would look like. So some protein, and then lots of vegetables in there, and depending on your carb preferences, just a little bit of whole grain as well. And not to overeat is also really important. So to just have, like, a normal, like, our dinner plates have gotten much bigger than they should be. So, like, kind of often it's the bread plate size, but to have, like, a nice balanced meal, and then of course drinking lots of water, and, like, you really recognize that, how satisfying that is, especially after a 24-hour fast. You're like, okay, I'm full, and my meal was just a normal size, and that is totally satisfying. So that's the best way to break a fast. And then the longer you fast, so if you're doing a 3 or 5-day fast, then you just want to break your fast with even less food. So, but that's all the more reason to work with someone for those longer fasts, because then it can get into that iffy space of you don't want to refuel too fast, because that can be very damaging to the cells.
Yeah, that's tricky, because after that long, it looks like as soon as you have the food in front of you, you just want to indulge as much as you can. So controlling how much we eat is very, very important. And so chewing and taking the time and mindful eating is going to help us also in eating slowly and then feel full and satisfied without indulging too much.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because
So,
that's where it gets really, it can get dangerous even after a 5-day fast if you're not refueling properly.
yeah. So which would be your best tips for someone that is starting, is a beginner for fasting and then is a little bit scared of what to do? I mean, we talk a lot of things in here already, but which would be your best transition, your best tips?
Yeah. So for anyone, whether headaches or not, just starting with a 12-hour fast where you stop eating after your supper meal and like really thinking of eating, especially in daylight hours as much as possible, and then doing a 12-hour fast, which if we think of it, that's how kids naturally eat, is like they stop after supper, they stop eating, and then they go to bed soon after, and they're sleeping for 10 or 11 hours, and not having food immediately once they wake up, but rather like usually they read some books and then they say, okay, I'm hungry now. So a 12-hour fast is really kind of that natural pattern, and I truly believe that all adults used to follow that in the past. So starting with 12 hours and then seeing how you feel. You can start increasing it a bit. And for anyone with a headache or trying to control their migraines and everything, that um, just recognize that if you go to, say, a 16-hour fast or a 20-hour fast, it might not be sufficient. So to kind of, it's hard to recommend fasting for 24 hours for someone who has a headache and migraine, because I really want everyone to look at their nutrition first. So if you have really peak nutrition and you've worked with a professional around that, then maybe you can build up to a 24-hour fast. But because 24 hours is much longer than, say, a 16-hour fast, there's just more things to consider than what we can get into in this short presentation. So.
And actually, you have a workbook, is fasting with fervor, where you
Yeah.
have a 30 days plan in here to help start a relationship or a love affair. I really like how you put it there, with fasting, and that is going to help that person in the transition to start fasting. This is available on Amazon, right? So how the person could start using this book? How is going to help them in
Yeah.
doing that transition?
So I find the book is really great for anyone who's tried fasting and who either is regularly fasting but not feeling like quite connected to it, or questioning like, is this good for me? Is this a lifestyle? Is this something I want to do? Or someone who's just not consistent at all, like fasting here and there. Then following that 30-day guide can really get them connected to all of the different benefits of fasting that don't have to do with weight loss. So especially before I started focusing on headaches and migraines, I was doing much more weight loss focus with fasting. And so that's when I wrote the book, and it really helps people connect to all of the other benefits of fasting rather than focusing on just the weight. So it's really like, look at the effects on our gut, look at the effects on our brain, look at the effects on our metabolism. And when you can connect to all of that, and weight loss is a secondary benefit, then the whole thing just feels easier and feels lighter. So that was kind of the main motivation behind the book, because I was attracting a lot of clients who were only doing fasting for weight loss and weren't really planning to do it long term, whereas fasting is much more of a lifestyle that you want to do it for the long term benefits and the longevity piece, rather than just being a weight loss tool. So.
Yeah, and actually, I was reading the book, and I don't think it's just for weight loss. As you said, it was focused. You when you wrote the book, you were focused on that, but actually, it's touching many different areas that could be affecting the way we see our body, the way we judge other people, or we care about how we are judged, right? It's the holistic approach to start a relationship with fasting, no matter which is the side effect that we are going to get. If it's weight loss, if it's eliminating migraines, if it's reverting an autoimmune condition, is how we are going to start seeing all those areas different in order to start connecting with fasting. So I think it's a really, really good workbook.
Well, I'm glad you saw that aspect too, because that was always my goal. It's like shift away from the weight loss. Like this is such a beautiful thing, and that it's for everyone. It's really because we hear of it so often from the weight loss perspective that we think that that's what it's for, but really it's like for overall health and that integration, and the whole mindset around it is what I was really trying to get the workbook to focus on. So
yes, thank you very much for bringing this tool to us. It's really, really powerful, but also I'm very excited because I think you have a gift also for the audience here.
Yeah. It's a quick start guide to fasting. So just to get our, foot in the door and start learning about it, and just cover some of the benefits and some of the different styles of fasting to start doing it and start incorporating it in your life. And then you kind of tweak things as you go.
Well, thank you very much. And if you will have to give us a last message here, the most important thing that somebody should be thinking about before fasting or during the process.
Yeah, well, for me, it's to really not give up and to keep pursuing. Like there's everyone's figured out a solution to something. It's just a matter of you keep searching for it, and the solution is there somewhere. And it's such a frustrating process. I mean, I did it for 5 years trying to figure it out. So now that I've really had this step system, this like formula, that now I'm out there to spread my message. But everyone has kind of their unique body and their condition that they're trying to overcome. So keep at it, and everything's figure outable kind of thing.
Well, thank you, Susannah, for being here and give us all these amazing advices to start taking control of our body, of our health, and specifically to be able to eliminate migraines with the powerful tool of fasting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.